There's a reason the avoidant person in your life freezes up around kissing you, and it has nothing to do with whether they find you attractive. You're an empath. You feel things on a level most people never touch. You pick up on energy. You read what's underneath someone's words. You connect emotionally in a way that can't be faked or performed around. And somewhere in the avoidance nervous system, even if they could never say it out loud, they know that kissing you is risky. Not risky in a physical sense. Risky because a kiss opens a channel of emotional and energetic closeness that their entire inner world has been built to keep shut. When an avoidant person actually kisses you, when they let themselves be present and unguarded in that moment, they are cracking open a door they've spent years, maybe their whole life, bolting shut. They're allowing a kind of closeness they can't fully control. They're risking that you'll feel, through nothing more than a kiss, everything they're trying so hard not to show you. The need underneath the coolness, the fear underneath the confidence, the vulnerability they've hidden so well that even they sometimes forget it's there. For someone who survives by keeping people at arm's length, a kiss with an empath is about as threatening as it gets. You'll feel too much. You'll understand too much. You'll see straight through the walls they've spent years constructing in a way that 100 conversations never could. A kiss with an empath tells the truth whether the avoidant wants it to or not, and that's exactly why they steer clear of it, why they find reasons to cut it short, why their touch stays careful instead of passionate, why they pull back the second a kiss starts to feel like it actually means something. To really get why avoidants specifically shy away from kissing empaths, you have to understand what a kiss actually is beneath the surface. It isn't just two mouths meeting, it's an exchange, a transfer of energy and emotion and unspoken information that words could never carry. When two people kiss and they're both truly there, present in their bodies, they are sharing their inner state with each other, whether they mean to or not. And empaths are wired to pick up on exactly that kind of sharing. You feel what the other person feels through that kind of contact. You sense whether they're open or closed off, whether they're really in the moment with you or somewhere else entirely, whether the version of themselves they're showing you lines up with what's actually happening inside them. That ability of yours to read the truth of someone through physical closeness is precisely what unsettles the avoidant so deeply. Their whole life has often been built around showing one thing while feeling another. They come across unbothered while quietly overwhelmed. They act detached while actually consumed by fear. They project control while secretly feeling like they have none. And a kiss with you threatens to expose the whole gap between the mask and the reality underneath it, to reveal the very vulnerability they work so hard to keep hidden. What an avoidant fears more than almost anything is being fully seen and understood by someone whose opinion actually matters to them, and you, as someone they're drawn to enough to be kissing in the first place, are exactly that person. If you see through their performance to what they're really feeling, the fear, the longing, the fragility, they lose the sense of control that has kept them feeling safe. It means they can no longer maintain the guarded version of themselves around you. It means you now hold information about them they never consciously chose to hand over, information that leaves them open to being hurt, judged, or eventually rejected. A kiss with an empath is the avoidant's deepest fear made physical, the fear of being known despite every defense they've built, the fear of a connection they can't manage or control, the fear that their true self, once revealed, won't be enough. So they avoid it. Or when they can't avoid it entirely, they kiss in ways that stay closed off and careful. They turn something meant to be intimate into something mechanical, almost like a formality, anything to keep from allowing that real energetic and emotional exchange to happen. When you kiss an avoidant person as an empath, you are sensing exactly what they're trying to keep hidden. You feel the fear underneath their calm exterior, the quiet panic about getting close, the constant internal vigilance to stay in control. You also sense their longing, the part of them that genuinely wants closeness, even as every other part fights against it, the need they'd never admit to out loud, the craving for real intimacy that clashes directly with their instinct to keep their distance. You notice their disconnection too. Even while they're physically kissing you, you can feel that some part of them isn't really there, that they're watching themselves from the outside, managing the moment instead of surrendering to it. All of that information comes through in the kiss, whether the avoidant wants it to or not, as long as the kiss is allowed to be genuine, allowed to be what a kiss is meant to be. A moment of shared presence and vulnerability. As an empath, you also sense the tug-of-war happening inside them during the kiss, the part of them wanting to lean in closer, fighting against the part desperate to pull away. You feel that internal battle between wanting connection and being terrified of it. You notice how they're still trying to hold on to control, even in a moment that's supposed to be about letting go of it. That internal conflict comes through clearly to you because you're naturally attuned to emotional undercurrents, especially in physical closeness with someone. And on some level, the avoidant knows this about you. They've likely encountered other people before who could read them, so they recognize you as one of those people too. They can sense that you're picking up on more than they want you to see, feeling more than they want you to feel, understanding more than they want you to know. And that recognition is exactly what makes kissing you feel dangerous to them. What you sense most sharply, more than anything else, is the avoidant's disconnection from their own inner world. When you kiss them, you're not only picking up their emotions, you're picking up their distance from those emotions. You can tell they're not fully inhabiting their own body in that moment, that they're observing the kiss rather than living inside it, that they're going through the motions of connection instead of actually connecting. That kind of self-disconnection is uncomfortable to sense as an empath because it leaves an emptiness where there should be fullness, an absence where presence should be. The avoidant isn't really with you in that kiss because deep down they aren't fully with themselves either. And you sensing their absence while you're fully present is exactly the thing they can't stand having exposed, because it points straight to the core wound underneath everything. They're disconnected from their own emotional experience, fragmented rather than whole, going through the performance of living rather than actually living. A kiss with an empath threatens to bring all of that to the surface, and that kind of exposure feels like too much for them to allow. Kissing creates a level of vulnerability the avoidant person simply can't tolerate. Physical closeness in general is hard for them, but kissing in particular strips away the barriers they usually maintain through words and physical space. They can hide behind words, they can protect themselves by keeping their distance, but a real kiss, slow, present, emotionally honest, takes both of those defenses off the table. It's physically close, so distance can't shield them, and it's wordless, so language can't shield them either. What's left is direct, unfiltered, emotional and energetic contact, and for the avoidant, that kind of exposure feels unbearable. It's a kind of nakedness they can't manage the way they manage everything else, and for someone whose entire identity is built around never being caught exposed, that vulnerability feels like a kind of death. Avoidants often find kissing especially vulnerable because it can reveal emotions they are trying to keep hidden. With empaths, this fear may feel even stronger, as avoidants may worry that subtle emotional cues or hesitation will be noticed. Kissing can also increase emotional closeness and attachment, which may trigger fears of dependence, loss, or reduced independence. As a result, some avoidants may keep kisses brief, emotionally restrained, or avoid them altogether. If an empath notices and comments on this guardedness, the avoidant may feel exposed, making physical intimacy seem even more threatening. While these patterns can occur for some people with avoidant attachment, they are not universal, and individuals vary widely in how they experience and express intimacy. Empaths are threatening in this context because you actually want emotional connection, and you can tell the difference when it's missing. Someone without that sensitivity might be satisfied with surface-level physical closeness that never goes any deeper, but you need the emotional layer underneath it. You can feel when it's absent, and you're likely to say so when the intimacy feels hollow. An avoidant kissing an empath knows on some level that a guarded, controlled, emotionally distant kiss won't be enough for you. You'll want more. You'll want the presence they struggle to give. You'll want the vulnerability they instinctively withhold. They know they can't give you what you're actually asking for through a kiss, and that awareness puts them in a bind. Disappoint you by staying the way they are, or terrify themselves by attempting a kind of vulnerability they haven't built the capacity for. Both options feel unbearable. So often they choose a third path entirely, avoiding kissing altogether or avoiding you altogether, removing themselves from a situation they feel they can't win. Empaths are also more likely to stir up the avoidant's own buried feelings, which is something they've spent a lifetime avoiding. When you kiss them with full presence and emotional openness, your own capacity to feel deeply can crack through their defended state. Your vulnerability can call forward vulnerability in them. Your genuine presence can make them suddenly aware of their own absence. Being close to someone who is fully feeling makes it harder for them to stay comfortably numb to their own emotions, and the possibility that kissing you might stir up feelings they've spent years avoiding is frightening enough on its own to make avoidance feel necessary. Your openness threatens to open them, and staying closed is the one thing they're most committed to. Kissing an empath represents a loss of control that the avoidant psyche just isn't built to handle. Control is their main line of defense. They manage relationships by keeping distance. They manage vulnerability by withholding. They manage the ending of things by leaving before they can be left. But kissing someone who can sense their internal state removes their control over what they're revealing. They can control their words carefully, but they can't fully control what gets transmitted energetically and emotionally in a kiss, especially not with someone who's naturally good at receiving it. Losing control over what you're picking up on about them feels intolerable, because control is how they maintain a sense of safety in the first place. Without it, they feel exposed, at the mercy of your perception and whatever judgment or rejection might follow. There's also the risk of losing control over their own feelings during the kiss. If they let themselves actually be present, if they stop performing and start genuinely experiencing the moment, they might feel more than they know how to manage. They might notice how much they actually care about you, how much they genuinely want the closeness, how deeply you actually affect them. Those feelings feel dangerous precisely because feeling them makes them real, and real feelings lead to real attachment, and real attachment means real risk of loss. Their usual way of staying in control is by not fully feeling in the first place, but an honest kiss with someone who's present and open makes that harder to sustain. The kiss threatens to make them feel, and feeling threatens the entire structure they've built to protect themselves. So they avoid the kiss, or they keep it so controlled and mechanical that real feeling never gets the chance to surface. This loss of control extends to not being able to manage how you respond to them either. When you kiss an avoidant and sense their fear, their disconnection, their guardedness, you might pull back, look at them with visible concern, ask if they're okay. Your reaction to what you sensed is something they can't dictate, and it might include seeing them as damaged or incapable in some way. They're deeply afraid of being perceived as weak or broken, and your empathic read on their struggle during the kiss threatens to reveal exactly that. They can't control whether you'll judge them, feel sorry for them, or lose interest based on what you pick up on, and that uncertainty is a risk they often choose not to take. There's also a loss of control tied to pacing. Avoidants generally want to control how quickly a relationship deepens, using tactics like distance, limited communication, and carefully managed physical closeness to slow things down. But a genuinely present kiss speeds intimacy up faster than they can regulate. One truly connected kiss can build more closeness than weeks of careful, guarded conversation, and they know that, and they fear it. They need intimacy to build slowly enough that they can manage their own fear response, but kissing you threatens to push the timeline past what they're able to handle, which is exactly why limiting or avoiding kissing becomes a way of protecting that control. The avoidance fear of kissing you shows up in specific, observable patterns if you know what to look for. They rarely or never initiate kissing themselves, leaving that to you so they can sidestep the vulnerability of showing desire outright. They keep kisses brief, pulling away before it has any chance to deepen into something that would actually build connection. They kiss with their eyes open, staying alert rather than letting themselves surrender to the moment. They might turn their face away when you go in for a kiss, putting up a literal physical barrier. They joke around during or right after kissing, using humor to deflect the emotional weight of it. They move quickly from kissing into something else entirely: conversation, sex, some kind of distraction, anything to keep the kiss from becoming its own meaningful moment. They also tend to avoid kissing during emotionally charged times. If the two of you have had a genuinely good day, if there's been real connection between you, if things feel intimate already, that's exactly when they'll pull back from kissing. Because deepening things further in a moment that already feels close is more than they can handle. They're more likely to kiss you when the emotional stakes feel low, a casual kiss goodbye, a quick hello, but they'll steer clear of kissing when the moment actually matters, because that would require being present with intensity they aren't equipped to hold. This selective avoidance, kissing you casually but avoiding it in meaningful moments, says a lot about what they're afraid kissing you might reveal or create. Another telling pattern is kissing you differently in public than in private. In public, they might be perfectly willing to kiss you, brief performative displays that serve the social purpose of looking like a couple. But in private, where the kiss would be just between the two of you with no audience to perform for, they pull back even more. That contrast reveals something important. Public kissing feels safe because it's a kind of performance, while private kissing feels dangerous because it would mean real connection, just the two of you, no audience required. They may seem more comfortable performing the relationship for other people than actually experiencing it in private vulnerability. They might also be more willing to initiate sex while avoiding kissing altogether. Sex can be made mechanical, performed without full presence, controlled by focusing purely on physical sensation instead of emotional connection. But the kissing that would turn sex into something intimate rather than just physical is exactly what they avoid. During sex, they might turn away from your kisses, keep their mouth occupied with something else, position themselves in ways that make kissing difficult. The contrast between being willing to have sex but unwilling to kiss reveals that, for them, kissing carries more emotional weight than sex does. Kissing is more vulnerable because it's purely about connection, while sex can be treated as release without requiring the same emotional presence. If you directly bring up their avoidance of kissing you, the lack of presence, the missing passion, their reaction to that conversation says a lot about how deep the fear goes. They might deny there's even an issue, insisting they kiss you plenty and that you're imagining the lack of connection. That kind of denial functions as a form of gaslighting, meant to make you second-guess your own accurate perceptions, meant to make you doubt the empathic information you're picking up on, meant to protect them from having to face their own fear. They might flip the conversation back onto you, suggesting you're too demanding when it comes to physical affection, that wanting more passionate kissing is excessive, that you're making a big deal out of something small. That kind of reversal is defensive, an attempt to shift the problem onto you so they don't have to look at themselves. They might also create distance after you bring it up. Naming their avoidance is essentially naming their fear, pointing directly at their vulnerability, seeing them in a way they don't want to be seen, and that kind of exposure can feel so uncomfortable that they need to pull back to feel safe again. They might go quiet or emotionally unavailable for days or weeks. They might get cold and distant. They might even end things altogether if being confronted about it feels like too much of a threat to their defenses. That kind of withdrawal after a confrontation is actually a sign you touched on something real, something they aren't ready to face, something that talking about felt just as exposing as kissing itself would be. Some avoidants, when confronted, will make a temporary effort to change. They'll start initiating more kisses for a while, try to be more present in the moment, but that effort usually doesn't last. because it's coming from a place of trying to appease you rather than from any real internal shift. They're trying to get you to stop bringing it up, to relieve the pressure they feel, but the underlying fear hasn't actually moved. The defenses are still fully intact, and eventually the old pattern resurfaces, because lasting change requires working through the root causes, usually with real support like therapy, not just adjusting surface behavior to keep a partner from complaining. That temporary improvement followed by a return to old patterns is actually evidence of just how deeply rooted the avoidance is. It can be pushed aside briefly through sheer effort, but without deeper work, it comes back. Understanding that the avoidant is avoiding kissing you specifically because you're an empath who would sense too much should shape how you think about the relationship going forward. Their fear of kissing you reflects a broader fear of intimacy in general. If they can't stay present through a kiss, they likely can't stay present through vulnerable conversations either, or through supporting you during hard times, or through the deep knowing that a long-term partnership actually requires. Kissing becomes a small window into the whole relationship. The same guarded, controlled, absent approach they take to kissing is likely how they approach intimacy across the board. And you're someone who needs real emotional connection, who needs presence, who needs to feel genuinely met by a partner. That's a real mismatch worth paying attention to. Recognizing this pattern can also help you trust your own perception. As an empath, you're sensing that something feels off during physical closeness with this person. You're picking up their fear, their disconnection, their absence, but they might be telling you everything is fine, that you're overthinking it, that you're imagining a problem that isn't there. Understanding that what you're sensing is real, that they're genuinely afraid of the closeness kissing you would create, confirms that your empathic read on the situation is accurate. You're not overreacting, you're not too sensitive, you're picking up on their defended state correctly, and that defensiveness reflects their limitations, not any inadequacy on your part. Trust what you sense in the kiss, and trust what you sense in the absence of real kissing too, because your read on the situation is giving you honest information about what they're currently capable of. This understanding should also make it clear that this isn't something you can fix by being more patient or more understanding. Their fear isn't about you being too much. It's about them being too guarded. If you were less empathic, less perceptive, less able to sense what they're feeling, it wouldn't make them any less afraid. It would just make it easier for them to keep hiding. But being comfortable while hiding isn't the same thing as actually being capable of intimacy. Working through that fear is something they need to do themselves through their own effort, through addressing their attachment wounds, through building a capacity they don't currently have. That work belongs to them. You can't make them less afraid by dimming your own perceptiveness. All you can really decide is whether you're willing to stay in a relationship with someone whose fear keeps them from being fully present with you, even in something as basic and human as a kiss. There's a particular kind of heartbreak that comes with being an empath paired with an avoidant partner around this exact issue. You end up living with the painful awareness that your capacity to feel, to sense, to genuinely connect, qualities that are usually a gift, are instead being experienced as a threat by the very person you're trying to be close to. You're too much to kiss, not because you're doing anything wrong, but precisely because you're doing everything right. You're present, you're open, you're vulnerable. You're feeling deeply, and all of that, which should be drawing someone closer to you, is instead pushing this particular person further away. There's heartbreak in being met with distance for the very qualities that make you who you are, your depth, your sensitivity, your emotional awareness. There's also a quieter kind of loneliness in not being kissed the way you actually need to be kissed. For you, kissing is how you connect, how you exchange energy, how you give and receive love. And with an avoidant partner, kissing often stays absent, mechanical, or guarded. You end up in a relationship while still starved for the kind of touch that actually means something, starved for real intimacy, even while technically being with someone. That loneliness, being with someone who isn't really with you, who can't meet you in something as fundamental as a kiss, runs deep. There's also a certain heartbreak in understanding exactly why they avoid kissing you in the first place. Once you see how afraid they really are, once you recognize the depth of the connection kissing you would create for them, you might feel real compassion for how scared they must be, how much pain they're likely protecting themselves from, how trapped they seem in patterns that keep them from experiencing real intimacy at all. That compassion is valid and real. But feeling for their struggle shouldn't mean accepting a relationship where your own needs for physical and emotional closeness go unmet indefinitely. Sometimes the heartbreak comes down to choosing yourself, having to walk away from someone you genuinely care about because they're too guarded to fully receive your care, too afraid to kiss you the way you actually deserve to be kissed. An avoidant person avoids kissing an empath because that empath would sense too much, know too much, see straight through defenses that terrify them to have exposed. Their avoidance of kissing you is evidence of their deepest fear, being truly known by someone who matters to them, being unable to manage what they're revealing, being exposed as guarded and disconnected and afraid underneath a performance of strength and independence. Your empathic nature threatens the entire defensive structure they've built around themselves, and kissing you would mean opening up to a kind of exposure they don't yet know how to survive. So instead, they avoid the kiss, keep what kissing they do, allow careful and guarded, and refuse the vulnerability that a real kiss with you would demand of them.